Hello, students, and welcome to another sixth grade math episode with me, your host, Mr. Nerlich. Today is lesson 3.3, and we're going to answer the question, what strategies can you use to compare and order fractions and decimals? So for fractions, you're going to write them with a common denominator and then compare the numerator to order them. You must have that common denominator or else you will incorrectly compare them every single time. Okay? We don't want that. All right, for decimals, we're going to line them up. Okay, so now we have decimals, and we're going to line them up vertically. Vertically just means up or down. Okay, vertical just means up or down. Okay, we stand vertically, right? So I am tall, like up or down. I don't stand like I'm doing a plank or whatever sideways or the horizon. I'm vertical. Okay, so up or down. Then, so we line them up vertically, okay, and then we compare them. No, hold on, wait. We compare them one place value at a time, and then we order them. Okay, so when you're watching this video, look for this mistake and laugh at me. Please laugh at me, please. We're going to line them up vertically, so which means up and down. Then we're going to compare them one place value at a time, and then we can order them. The point of lining them up vertically is so we can look at one place value in each problem, the same place value, and say which number is bigger or smaller, and then you know. And then we can order them. Okay. And the important thing is when you go back to order your fractions, especially, you want to make sure you order the original set of fractions. So you're going to change them to common denominators, but the original problem will ask you to order certain number of fractions, and it wants you to use those exact fractions when you reorder them. So you must keep your workspace organized so that when you go to order them, you're actually ordering the fractions they gave you. So let's look at number one, example one, and we will see what I mean by ordering the original fractions, okay? So we're going to order these fractions from least to greatest. So least to greatest. All right, so my fractions are 10/16, -1/4, 3/2, and we have 3/8. Now, we gotta find common denominator for these fractions to compare them, because I might be able to tell you what order they go in, but that's because I'm your math teacher or one of your math teachers, and as a math teacher, I should be able to look at these and tell you. However, sometimes fractions can get confusing, and it's not always as easy as it seems. So I'm going to show you how to do it versus just saying, well, there's the order because I know how to do it. But that's not going to help you, and I want you to still show your work for these problems, because then if you make a mistake, it's very easy to find your error and we can correct them. All right. So I notice that I'm looking at this. I notice that 2 fits into 4, and 4 fits into 8, and 8 fits into 16. So I'm kind of thinking that 16 could be my common denominator, right? However, this fraction here is not in simplest form. So if I take 10 over 16 and I divide it by 2 on the numerator and denominator, divide them both by 2, right? Then I would get 5 over 8. And now I see that I can make my common denominator of 8. Because I can't, these are prime numbers, so I can't break these down any further. They will not, it can't work. Okay, so I know that 8's is what I want to use for my common denominator. So now I have 5 eighths. Let's see, I have negative 1/4. So we'll just leave the negative sign on there because it doesn't really matter right now. But we're going to leave it there. And so we say negative 1/4. And what do I need to get from 4 to 8? Well, I need to multiply by 2. So that means I need to multiply by 2 on the top, or my numerator. And I'm going to get negative 2 over 8. Okay? And what matters is negative 1/4 means this fraction is 1/4. So if the negative sign is on top, fine. Or if it's more of like negative and I have 2 over 8, it's fine. A lot of times we tend to write it a little higher up so we don't get it confused, or the lines don't run together. So we still see a negative and it doesn't end up being like this, because then that's not negative 2 over 8, that's 2 over 8. So then we'd have to put another negative. Okay, so that's why sometimes it looks like, we put the negative on top a little bit. That's okay. And you want the negative to be the first thing you read, so you want it towards the top because you're going to read a fraction from top to bottom, numerator to denominator. All right, moving on. Now we have 3 halves. So let's see. Let's just make a little line here to kind of divide it up. And we have 3 halves. And I say 2 times what gets me 8? Well, that would be 4. So 2 times 4 equals 8. So then I must multiply 3 times 4, and that equals 12. All right, so now I have, that one is 12 over 8. So I have 5 eighths. Let's circle that one. I have negative 2 eighths, and I have 12 eighths. All right, and the last one, okay, well, we have 3 eighths, and 3 eighths is already written, so we know that's our thing. Now, here's where I talk about we have to write them like they were originally, okay? So what I like to do is I like to say, I know I got to go from least to greatest. So I got to find my smallest one, and I like to number them whatever order they're going to go in, right? So since 1 is smaller than 4, because I have 4 fractions, I'm going to label the smallest number as 1. Therefore, I'm going to put a little 1 next to this one down here, because it's negative. And negative means it's left of 0, so it has to be my smallest number, because all the rest are positive, or smallest fraction. So all the other fractions are positive, so this fraction has to be my smallest. So 1. Then I compare my numerators, and I say, okay, well, let's see, I have 3, 5, and 12. What's the smallest? This next smallest is 3. That would be number 2. Then I have, this would be number 3, because 5 is smaller than 12, and this is number 4. So now we cannot write this as negative 2 eighths, 3 eighths, 5 eighths, 12 eighths, because it didn't ask us to order all these fractions with eighths. It asked us to order the fractions 10 sixteenths, negative 1/4, 3 halves, 3 eighths. So if we are going to order them, we would end up with negative 1 over 4, 3 eighths, that's a huge comma, 3 over 8, 10 over 16, and 3 halves. And as always, when you're listing numbers, fractions, decimals like this, you need to put commas in between to show, because when we write a list, just like when you say 3 things, I had apples, comma, pears, comma, and oranges for breakfast today. You put commas as a list, as in writing. So, and we're writing out numbers, we're going to put commas when we make a list. So these fractions in order from least to greatest are -1/4, 3/8, 10/16, 3/2. And if I would have just gone by the idea that, well, I compared the numerators, and so 3/2 would be small because that's not true because we don't have common denominators. So we must find your common denominator first before we can do anything else, order them, and then change them back into their original fractions and put those fractions in order. So this takes a little time. It's a little tedious, but you guys can do that. Okay? So let's see. I forgot something. So let's see. Oh, aha. Then order the original fractions. So the one thing that you needed underlined on the bottom here that we just got to is order your original fractions, which we just did. We ordered the original fractions. All right. If I went a little fast, pause the video to catch up in your notes to fill in the fractions with their common denominators, and then we can move on. Okay, example number 2. Order these decimals. We're going to order these decimals from least to greatest. We're going to order these. This is example number 2. We're going to order these decimals. Order these decimals from least to greatest. Okay, so here's my decimals. I have 2 and 95/100ths. Now you could say 2.95, and in the beginning of the year, that's totally going to be acceptable. But the mathematical way for saying that is 2. The decimal means and then we have 95 out of 100 total hundredths. So 2 and 95/100ths. We have 3 and 9/10ths. You'll probably say 3.9 to begin. -3 and 1/10. And then we have -1 and 85/100ths. Okay, this example is great because we have several negative numbers. And so that's going to, because last time we only had one negative. So we knew that one negative really wasn't going to trip us up too much. But since we have multiple negatives, then we now know that it's going to be a little tricky. All right, so let's look. We want to line them up vertically. So I have 2.95 or 2 and 95/100ths, 3 and 9/10ths, -3 and 1/10, -1 and 85/100ths. All right, so anywhere you do not see you have a blank here, you can automatically put in a 0 because it's at the end of the number, and at the end of the number, that 9/10ths is the same as 91/100ths, or 1/10 is the same as 10/100ths. So that's why we can write it. And now all the numbers look, I don't want to say the same, but they're the same like size. They're the same number of digits in each number. And now when we compare them, we don't make any silly mistakes. Because a lot of times I see students will do this. They'll have 2 and 95/100ths, and then they'll put like 3.9. Now my decimals are not lined up. And when I'm lining them up vertically, I must line up my decimals. Like, your place values need to be lined up in order for this to work. Okay? We must line up our place values correctly in order for us not to make a mistake. All right. So the first thing we want to look at, so we want to fill in the empty, and I didn't write this down, I just kind of spoke about it, but the empty place values. So we're going to put in these empty place values with a 0, which is what we just did. Okay, so now that fills in your notes. And I want to look at, okay, since I'm looking at negatives now, we have more than one negative. We want to look at what is the biggest negative I have. So what's bigger, -3 or -1? Well, -3 is bigger, right? So that's going to be my first number, -3 1/10. But remember, we want to write it like we did originally. Then I know this is also negative, so that one's done. Now we're going to have this one's done, and we have -1 85/100. Okay? And then what we want to do is we want to look at, always want to start at the largest place value and say, okay, so we want to go from least to greatest, right? So let's remember that we want to go from least to greatest. And since I want to go from least to greatest, wow, that is not spelled graced. I don't know what graced is. Greatest. There we go. Now we can spell. Least to greatest. So since I want to go from least to greatest, that means I want to find the smallest number next, smallest positive number, because the largest negative is further from 0, and that's going to get me the smallest. But now that I'm in the positives, I want to find the next smallest number. Okay, so we want to kind of flip-flop. When you're in negatives, you want to look for the largest negative as your smallest. And then as you get into positives, your smallest number is your smallest number closest to 0. So I look at this and say, oh, look, this is easy. What's smaller, 2 or 3? Well, 2. So that one's done. So I have 2 95/100. And then I have 3 9/10. Okay? So that is the order. You should have them in negative, 3 1/10, -1 85/100, 2 95/100, and 3 9/10. All right. One thing I want to show you. Let's say we had this. Two and 95/100. Well, it's not going to work because they're both 2. So we want 3 and 95/100. Okay. Because in this one, all the numbers in the first place value, the ones place, were all different, right? So that made it easy. So let's look at this. So if I look at this and I say, oh, well, I want to go least to greatest, which is my smaller number. Well, 3 and 3 is the same, so that doesn't help us. 9 and 9, that's the same, so that doesn't help us, right? So then I look and I say, oh, I have 0 and 5, and 5 is larger than 0, so that means then 3.9, and then 3 and 95/100. So 3 and 9/10 and 3 and 95/100. That's how you would order those from least to greatest. So just make sure that you're always starting at the place value furthest to the left, and you're working from that way, one place value to the right each time. All right, Falcons. Well, that is your lesson for today. So try some of these on your own. Good luck, keep soaring, and have a great day. This is Mr. Nerlich signing off.